Mandatory MFA for all of Azure sign-in attempts. What a good move, Microsoft. So Microsoft has recently announced that they're going to enforce MFA for all of Azure sign-in attempts. So the date that they have given was 15th October 2024. So that's not too long to go. So I want to discuss a bit more about this mandatory MFA enforcement, how that will affect to your accounts that you currently have. If you don't have MFA enabled for some reason, it can be a break glass account or it can be a service account, but those accounts are accessing your Azure portal or Azure services somehow. So I want to discuss how that will be affected and what sort of solutions that Microsoft have given and how to enable those. So this is not a technical step-by-step guide. I have written a separate blog post for that. I will be sharing that one around as well. So let's go through the Microsoft Learn document and my blog post to identify what sort of things that you can do before this big change. Now I have the documentation from Microsoft that explains this mandatory enforcement. So I went to the Learn document, as you can see. So it has got the planning for mandatory multi-factor authentication for Azure and other administration portals. So that's the article that I'm on at the moment. So let's go through this and find out what does it say. So they have done a blog post as well. I will be going through that in a sec. I think that's when they first explained or first advised this change. The scope of enforcement, you can see some applications and the applications IDs and the enforcement phase. So Azure Portal, Entra Admin Center, Intune Admin Center, the CLI, Azure CLI, Azure PowerShell, Azure Mobile App, and Infrastructure as Code tools have all got this enforcement scope. So they got some phases. So I believe these are all going through on the 15th October, which is to say second half of 2024. Um, Let me just maximize the page for a sec. And these are all early 2025. But as you can see, there are a number of important portals that are going on this day. So you can see the application ID as well. Um, and so, what are the accounts? So that's the most important one, right? So as Microsoft mentioned here, all user accounts who sign into applications listed above and perform any CRUD or create, read, update, or delete operations will be required to use MFA enforcement. So they have given few options or few solutions how to use a different sort of an account or different method to get away from this enforcement. So your accounts that uses for different activities like break glass or service accounts will not be affected, as in the process will not be affected because they have given a different solution for that. So I opened up the blog post that mentioned over here, just this one. So it just basically says announcing mandatory MFA for Azure sign-in. So that was published August 20, August 15th, 2024. So basically it just says the same and why they are doing that and how that will protect the Azure portals and Azure logins and all the sign-ins. So how to prepare? So they have given some helpful URLs as well, and Microsoft will send 60-day advance notice to all Entra Global admins via email and in the notification center and the message center as well. So many different ways that Microsoft will announce this change beforehand to make sure your processes are all up and running even after this change because you are doing a different way of achieving this. So you are going through a different way to achieve what you've been doing for those accounts. How to use Entra flexible MFA. So they have given a couple of ways. So you can use the authenticator to approve sign-ins. There's no rocket science over there. 5 to 2 security keys to do that, or certificate-based authentication, and SMS. It's not basically not secure at all these days. So it's not recommended in a way. So moving forward, it's just it just Microsoft mentioned another step towards securing the portal, securing your user accounts, securing your environments. So that's about that blog post. So coming back to the Microsoft Learn document, so we discussed about the applications. So what are the options that you can use? What are the solutions that you can use in order to get away with this? Use the same solution, but get away with any issues. So if you're using any service accounts in your Logic Apps, in your Azure accounts today, in your Azure services today, you can use workload identities, right? So we'll roughly check what workload identities are. And also, if you're using Break Glass accounts, I'm sure you do. And if you have excluded the break glass accounts from your mandatory MFA for all users at the moment, they have given a couple of ways, right? So 5 to 2 passkeys, which is phishing resistant ways to use that. Um, Phishing resistant methods using passkeys, and also no wonder certificate based authentication for more secure. So they've all got different ways to set things up. We'll go through those pages as well. And as I mentioned earlier, so the enforcement phases, what's the phase one and what's the phase two, and notification channels, as I mentioned in the blog, and how to prepare. So they have given the steps here of how to prepare and what applications to check as well. So we'll check how to identify today whether you have these accounts in use, but not using any mandatory MFA. So how to check those stuff? Let's have a look. See, before we jump on to the blog post that I've written about this enforcement and how to do the account setup and everything, let's discuss about this one as well. So this is basically requesting more time for preparation for the enforcement, right? So between August 15th and October 15th, if you're a global administrator, you can jump into the Azure portal and then postpone the start date of this enforcement. So you've got time until March 15th, 2025. So they got some instructions. Global administrator must have elevated access before postponing the start date, and then you can inform your stakeholders if you got other people who are involved in this process to create those different solutions that Microsoft have informed, and also test those as well. So you got before um, March 15th, 2025 to act basically. So let's see my blog post now. So I have specifically written this article just to inform the steps and pretty much the same thing, plus a bit more about this mandatory enforcement. So this is the blog post. I'll add the URL in the description as well, so you can go ahead and see more on that. So basically, I mentioned, which I just mentioned here in this video. So what's the enforcement scope? So who will be affected and who will not be affected, right? That's a big one. So let's find out. So who are not affected? So end users who access applications, websites, or services hosted on Azure, they will not be affected. They are standard use accounts, but the idea behind that is the application itself will have some sort of a methodology to enable MFA, right? So because of that, those use accounts will not be affected. Workload identities will not be affected, like manage identities, service principals, because that's the solution that you need to go if you have a service account today that's excluded from the conditional access policy. And who will be affected? As I mentioned, the Breglass accounts, user identities, sign in into Azure services, run automations, logic apps, and whatnot, and any account that's used to log into these portals today. So how do you prepare, right? So Microsoft had mentioned in their article, which I showed earlier, run reports. So basically to understand what are those accounts, so you can get in line with all the processes and your stakeholders and inform what to do, right? So they have given a couple of ways to do that. Number one, you can use the sign-in logs. That's very simple. So sign-in logs, as you can see, you have to go to the Entra portal, user sign-in logs, and filter the application and the authentication requirements, right? So the authentication requirements should be single-factor authentication because you haven't enforced MFA for those accounts. And then you can identify who are the users who are using single sign-on. Actually, single factor authentication, like only the password. This is a good way to understand if you have any other users who are using only the password, not any other factor. This is a good time to understand those users as well. So that aside, that's number one. You can use the partial method, the export MSID Azure MFA report. So this is something that Microsoft have given in their article again. So if I go to that partial page. Actually, this is under MS Identity Tools. So it has mentioned how to install the module and how to run. It will give you a good output, like a CSV output. It says what are the permissions and roles that you require, basically global reader, and what are the permission scopes as well. So it will give you like a good CSV reports of who are the users who doesn't have second factor or the multi-factor enabled. So that's another good way to understand your user landscape as well. Also, you can use the multi-factor authentication gap analyzer workbook. So to do that, you got to have a prerequisite Azure Log Analytics. Um, so that's one thing that you need to understand, right? So you need to have your Azure subscription, Azure Log Analytics enabled, and if you have that, you can import this workbook into your Log Analytics and to get more information. So once you have your Log Analytics set up and your workbook imported, then you can look for these application IDs. So these are the IDs which have added into Microsoft documentation as well. So I just put it here. So if you look for those applications, you can identify who are the users that are logging into these, that can log into these applications without the MFA. So that's a gap, right? So that's the gap analyzer would do. So yeah, so if I go into this URL over here, so this is how it's a step-by-step guide again. I haven't added that in my blog, but it has got what's the licensing that you require. So this is how you set up the log analytics workspace, and what sort of roles that you need for RBAC, and what are the intra roles that you require, and how to import. Right, so it's a very easy step-by-step guide, but the biggest prerequisite here is you need to have your Azure environment, your log analytics workspace as well. So after that, I have mentioned what are the recommended actions, right? So you know your accounts now, and what's next, right? How to prepare. So out of the options that Microsoft have given, I went through the FIDO2 method for the Break Glass account, and how it can be phishing resistant as well. So I just added Microsoft have given in their documentation. So this is just a step-by-step guide to create passkey. So this is a physical passkey. So the idea is if you're using Break Glass accounts and if you don't have a password right, the second factor right now, you create a passkey and please keep it in a safe locker or somewhere. And it should be fireproof as well, right? So yeah, so that's how you secure your physical key. But how to create that, how to get that account up and running with the physical key. So these are the steps which I mentioned over here. So definitely it's not a hard process, right? So you just need to put some thought into it to understand your accounts and then go from there. So I have given some steps and the result as well, and the user and the break glass account point of view as well over here. And also the second factor, as in the second account set, which is the service account. So service accounts, yes, again, you might have your UPNs, which is basically excluded from the main mandatory MFA user conditional access policy. So you need to use a workload identity for that, right? So this is how you do it. I haven't gone through the steps because it's a bit of a lengthy process, I would say, and you need to have your Azure environment set up as well. If you're using service accounts in your Logic apps or in your Azure services, that means you have an Azure environment, right? So it's just a matter of going through this step by step guide to understand how to create a workload identity. And what Microsoft's saying is they will be excluded anyway because they are not actual account objects that they will enforce MFA on. So I have given the URL here. So what are the managed identities and how to create? There's a good video from Microsoft as well, and what are the types that you can use and everything. So that's a very comprehensive sort of a step-by-step guide that Microsoft have given here. So there you have it. So I have gone through the document from Microsoft and my blog post as well. So you know what's the change and how to prepare, how to do your due diligence, how to understand who are the users who will be affected with this change, and how to be prepared, right? So how to go for the other solutions, like the recommended solutions Microsoft had given. So you can prepare for this October 15th big change that's coming for the mandatory MFA enforcements. So I hope this video was useful and you learned something new. Please give a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel so we won't miss any new videos. And until next one, thank you.